Oh, I found the very perfect logo, and so I had to get it. So now I just am saving it into our folder here, which is in here and here. So I start working by loading up your mock-ups first, because it's important for me to get an idea of what this website's supposed to be looking like. So how do I get the logo right there? Well, I'll start by adding the image to the static assets. You'll have to use a URL for on the website, but just putting that together and saving it. Alright, we got something. Well, in the CSS, we can just target this image. So let's not change this rule. We'll just do logo image max width 70%. And yeah, we just like that. And it is super easy to change this to white or any other color. All this is just right out of the kit. Just super nice. And I bought this too, Charlie, with my own money. This is what I'm spending on instead of saving for my child, because I believe in you, Charlie. And so this means you must believe in yourself as well. Now we're going to also make the define a class for the character that we had talked about before, but we didn't implement. And this is going to be a many-to-many relationship. And we will have a lot of the same things as everything else. Let's see. Okay, what other sort of stats you might want your character to have? You need to add those strength or other traditional RPG stats for reference. That could be cool. So I'd add them in as you feel necessary. So we'll represent this as a character and character. I guess we'll just use the name. Oh, I have to say chapter. Okay, cool. That'll be good for now. What the tricky part that I wanted to work on in particular is the relationships with this and the story. So I can't, unfortunately, connect the character with stories directly. Because it's a many-to-many relationship, there's no one story that will have a single character ID or a separate column for each individual character. That's too much. So what we do is we create a helper table. So we may unromantically call this character underscore story just to say that we're joining these two tables. But in more realistic terms, it could be some sort of presence or appearance in a story. So if you're in that story, you've made an appearance in that story. And so that way you can say in what capacity were they appearing in that story? Was it a main character? Was it a villain? Etc. And so this way you can characterize that the time in which this character was a part of that story. It's a separate object in our database. And it's also the record that we're going to use in order to see which characters are in which story. The most important thing that it does, though, is it holds the characters.id in this box here, and the ID from the story, and that is how we fuse one record from the character, fused it with one record from the story, and this facilitates that many-to-many relationship. Now, why, when I define the relationships in the database, do I say character and to stories and stories to characters. And that's because this is saying in this record, in this instance of an appearance where a character was at a story or in a story, and we will note that this the event had this character, but and so we're fusing it with the character object. Now, if I were to look up that character, I would see that if I wanted to find what stories he was in, I would hit character.stories. This is the path that character in our database would get to their story. From the character to the story, it would go through this record. So for the character, this record is populating that character's stories. And it's plural because this will be one of many appearances that character had in a story. So the relationship will be with the character object for this record, but we are filling on that other end. We are filling the need for that character to be able to look up which stories he was in. That's why it's switching here when I'm defining this type of relationship. I was about to create a connection with, instead of the character in a story, with a character in an individual chapter. The problem with that is that it would be pretty tedious every time you wanted to make a new chapter to function all of the characters. I think it'll just be more convenient to link it to the story at large, the list of characters. Even though we can create conditions to only reveal certain information based on which order you've seen, and so we can still play off of that progression in which we reveal more details of the character based on which chapter they've seen. However, we'll make the link with the story object as we were planning. So a story will have characters, and that's database relationship actually with the character story or appearance, and inside each one of their records, a record of the story would fill out that object's .story property. So you can see we have a similar helper table that'll help connect users. So we have users, and this is actually a relationship with the story user helper table, and this will fill in that story, and that means I need to make sure that this is represented over in the user model as well, and that's stories, story user, back to populates user. Okay, so we should be all good there. Let's save this, and the first thing that I'll need to do is load SQL and check for your database. It's there. Drop database DB. Oh, it's all gone now. Create database DB. See that it's there. Super duper. And quit. Cool. Now I can run the server. Alright, first bug. I would have been shocked if there was no bugs. Let's see here. And that was, of course, because all of these need primary keys. I could have avoided that if I had avoided needing creating a separate model and just made a joint table here instead of creating a separate class. I could have avoided this, and I did include this here. But that was a strategic decision that many may disagree with, and I kind of do as well. So we can always move in that event instead of having helper tables that are not helper tables, but actual objects that have their own ID. But that's more, that returns to our conversation about having an appearance, being an actual thing that we want to give an ID and track and maybe qualify with additional like character, changes in characters, so you can note how a character changed over time and track that via appearance, possibly adding another multimedia layer to this as well. So that's the strategic decision that you may say, no, we don't need any of that. Let's figure how to switch back over to a simpler model with less to do over giving an object to our join table. Oh, and we also want to make sure we're importing all of the objects. And not just the few that I had written there. But now I'm getting a different problem that I've got to track down. So the problem happens when we're building the view for the user object in Flask admin. And so that means while it's forming that relationship, something breaks down. All right, I've commented out the connection here and here between users and stories, and I've commented out the join table therein. I'm going to now drop the database again, recreate the database, and run the server once more. Okay, so we're on a different problem now, but that actually is just the init trying to get a story user. No, what was that model? What was that error coming from? Yeah, okay. Oh, okay, we still have the error even after that is cut out. That was not the source. Are you kidding me? It's because I got distracted while explaining things and I left this undone. It works. It's alive. Okay, I folded all the code up so I can see that you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 objects now. And that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, sorry. So cool, they are all added up onto Flask admin, and now you are free to try to draw out the diagram that explains how these things are connected together. I look forward to working with you on that.